First of all, it's up here on the board. I put it up here as well. Took a picture of it. This Saturday from 9 or 10 to 2, and they did tell me lunch could be provided. It didn't say 100%. It's going to meet in this room initially for A+ certification study and informational session. And then if it's too large for this room, they'll move to another room. So again, 10 to 2 in this room, going to over A+ certification. If you are interested, email Jim Conley between now and then. That would be great. So you have that information. Tonight we're going to be going over Chapter 9. And Thursday the lab is on TrueCrypt. Encrypting a partition or hard drive and being able to not only partition it but encrypt it, but also be able to hide partitions in a hard drive and talk about the purposes for that within IT. And then it can be used maliciously as well. We'll talk about that. 3D printing demo, April 9th. We've got about 25 signed up for it so far. It's going to be in the PEC building, 0110. Got a local firm, Delaney Drafting and Design, is going to come and print live an iPhone 5 case. If you've never seen a 3D printer print something from scratch, from bottom up, with polymer plastic, pretty awesome. And it's a huge technology that's just basically in the infancy stage as far as usage. But basically it can be used for widgets for factories when they're creating new parts, movable parts.
I've just seen a hand get created for a little boy.
Yeah.
Earlier today.
A chain. I saw a chain yesterday, like a bike chain, was created and it was working and functional. So if you've never seen it, you just have to see it basically to wrap your head around it. But basically the technology is for, again, making widgets and parts for factories too. On the website, when you go there, it has a video with pictures of some of the stuff he's worked on. Architectures will send him AutoCAD drawings. He can create a mock makeup of the house per spec of a 3D rendering, and different colors, different things like that. So it's pretty cool. It's cool technology. It's something that it's local. A local guy's been around for a while here in Rockford. And he's going to present from 6 to 8. We got room for 60 in there. I'd like to pack it out if possible. It starts going on the news tomorrow through the weekend, so it'll probably fill up pretty quick. But I'm trying to tell all the students to get their names in first, because once it fills up, we can't put any more in there. So if you guys want to attend, or you know somebody wants to attend with you, you can have a guest up to 5 per student can attend. Up to 5 per student right now. And so we want to give you guys first bids on coming to this. So I definitely recommend it, highly recommend it. The guy that runs it's a really cool guy. He's been in this for years. Has anybody ever seen a live demo of a 3D printer? You ever seen one? You definitely want to see it. If you just basically go to YouTube and you can, search for 3D printer, and they'll show you a whole bunch of, cool videos. But I do have some showcasing one on Rockford Cocoa Heads, and then also where you go to the RSVP. This link, by the way, I'm showing you, this page is on rockvalleycollege.edu. It's a news release that was done yesterday for our campus. The news release for the news will be tomorrow. So definitely avail yourself to that. We will be serving pizza and water, too. So that's an incentive. If no other reason, you get fed. All right? I always do that. So questions on that? Questions on the 3D printing demo? Think it created. Anybody have questions? No?
No, I got class that night.
Oh, man. You can cancel it. No, just kidding. Yeah, 6 to 8. 6 to 8. So anyway, anybody going to try to go? Raise your hand high. Yeah, why not? 3 or 4 of you. Good. And then those of you who raise your hand, you can invite others. Or if you can't go because of class or whatever, tell other people about it. That'd be awesome if you could do that. It is going to be recorded, both what he's talking about on the screen and voice, and then he's going to bring a videographer to videotape the whole thing, and we're going to put it on the website afterwards. So if you can't make it because of class, understand, just, we're going to have it available for folks to see afterwards. Well, the only thing I'll mention on this further is there's two different types of 3D printers. One is a 3D printer that you start with a block of basically like plastic, and then it molds it to the shape of that object that it's printing from like an AutoCAD file. And then the second type is the one we're going to look at during the demo, which is that basically from foundation, it lays a 0.022 micro plastic polymer starting at the base, and it just looks like a laser going across it like this, and it just keeps building up till the 3D is done. 3D prototype is finished. So it's pretty cool. It also has like a gel resin in it too, that kind of gives it that kind of not just hard plastic, but where it's flexible and movable. And they have been experimenting with it with healthcare and things of that nature. I know you said you saw the hand earlier. So a lot of cool uses that can come up. So go to rockvalleycollege.edu to RSVP. If you can't go, tell other people. All right. Department of Labor grant. This is part of what we're doing Saturday, but this is another thing I want to encourage you to become a part of if you not already have done so. I know some of you have already signed up for it. The DOL grant is basically where students can sign up. Again, you can email Jim Conley or Stephanie, either one, or you can email myself and I'll forward it to them if you're interested in the Department of Labor grant. Basically what it is they follow you post-graduation, during your schooling here and a post-graduation, if you sign up for it. And the benefit to you is you get certifications. You can get all the certifications pretty much you want. From the networking side, A+, programming, a lot of cool certifications you get at no cost. The only thing you have to do is sign up that you'll agree to be followed basically for a while. And I don't know what that entails, but I'm sure it's very harmless. So definitely avail yourself to that. I know 2 or 3 of you have already signed up for that in here. If you haven't signed up for it, just email me, or you can see me after class. I can tell you more about it. Who has already signed up for this already? I know 2 or 3 of you have. So those are if you guys keep your hands up for just a second. Those that have raised their hands that might be able to help you as well after class. If you know, they might not know any more than I do, but they can tell you what they know and get more people a part of it. So I think it's definitely a great thing for us to do. Virtualization. Virtualization and networking is becoming more and more available for IT departments to afford. It's not cheap, by the way, to virtualize. We just quoted a local company in town that I work for to upgrade their phone system and virtualize about $120,000. So it's not cheap. But instead of having 5 servers for the upgrade, they only have 1 server and 3 or 4 blades within the server and more data, but less hardware. And really right now what you're paying for in virtualization is the technology and the software. That's what you're paying for. Now, granted, it'll get cheaper and cheaper as it goes, but right now it's still kind of expensive. But the reason IT departments are wanting to go to it is not because of the coolness of it, which it is cool, but because of the security aspects of it. The least amount of hardware you can have in your environment, the least amount of breakdowns can happen. Does that make sense? It's pretty simple. And so when you virtualize anything, it's going to be cheaper in the long run, or save you money in the long run. It might be more expensive up front, but save you money in the long run. Some of you have already done this, but we've done a little bit of this in here where you create virtual operating systems. Same concept. Creating a virtual server. An example you could at home with Microsoft Virtual PC, with VMware, with a number of other virtual appliances where you could basically, out of the box, both open source and paid, build multiple operating systems within your one system, or install multiple operating systems within your one system. Have a virtual XP, virtual 7, virtual 8, virtual Linux, virtual servers. And I know I've already mentioned it to you, but I'll mention it again. technet.com, technet.net, technet.com. has links on their website to download at no cost, like 160, 180 day evaluation copy of all operating systems, all the way up to server level. So avail yourself to that. No sense in buying it as a student. I don't buy them. I just download them and play with them, configure them like I want. On different systems, at the end of the life cycle, it just, you can't run it anymore, and then you can download another one. It's a great learning tool. It's a great testing tool as well. We'll look at VLANs and then remote connectivity. In my 110 class, we're actually been covering remote connectivity quite a bit and using VNC and some remote clients like TeamViewer, which are real popular today. VNC used to be real popular. TeamViewer, I would say, is probably the most robust, best way to go for IT departments when it comes to remoting into other clients. That's real popular. And then VPNs. Everything's got VPNs. My iPad's got VPN. My iPhone's got VPN. The one thing that does not have VPNs that businesses are more leaning towards iOS is Droids do not have business level VPNs. All corporate entities, since BlackBerry's out of the market now, the only other two types of phones you can get for businesses is going to be Droid or iOS. Droids do not have a commercial level VPN. I don't know if you knew that or not. So that's why a lot of companies are now buying only iPhones. And there's no future within the near future of VPNs coming commercial level on Droids, which surprises me. But it doesn't surprise me as well because there's so many different flavors of Droids. I guess it'd be a nightmare to set up. So anyway, a lot of your companies now are using VPNs either on a tablet or on an iPhone, be an iPad or iPhone. And that's helping Apple for sure because it's boosting their sales in business, the business world. But VPNs basically give you a private tunnel from wherever you're at to your business, a private, secure, encrypted tunnel. And basically it's kind of like looking at a tunnel like this, a circle, and we could say inside of this tunnel is your data. Nothing can penetrate this tunnel because it's encrypted with high encryption, and as data flows through that tunnel back and forth, it's literally like you're sitting behind the wall or in your cubicle in your place of business with all the security, all the internet connection, file connections, data connections, email, things of that nature. So once you connect to VPN, you then have full-blown access to your network and all the security wrapped around your network within a VPN tunnel. And then network as a service. This is a huge term you might have heard of. If you haven't, you will hear it a lot in IT. It's where basically you buy a cloud service of some type for a certain period of time. We'll say an example would be you want to host Exchange, Microsoft Exchange on the cloud. That's real popular now. You don't need to install it locally. You install it on the cloud. You run it from the cloud. Entire operating systems can now be ran from the cloud as a software as a service. So there's a lot of money to be made and is being made in software as a service. Amazon is the number one. Salesforce.com is number two, which Amazon owns. And so those are the two big names in software as a service. And basically anything you connect to from any device, which a lot of people, we all have different devices now, software as a service basically runs through any web browser. And you can connect to your stuff. Now the downside from IT is what you think. If everything's in the cloud, what's the downside for IT departments? If everything's in the cloud, think about it for just a second.
Less hardware.
Less hardware, that'd be an upside for us, right? What about downside? What is a negative of cloud?
If it breaks, we can't fix it.
Yeah, it's not locally, so I have no control if something does happen. Number one. What else about data? Let's talk about data for a second. Where's the data hosted on it in a cloud service? In your building or outside your building? Outside your building. So you don't own it basically. It's not in your control. Now there are some services coming out to where it's kind of a mirrored thing, to where you have a mirrored SAN server locally that mirrors everything that's on a cloud. that way if the cloud goes down, guess what? It goes back up to your SAN server to where you don't lose data, you don't lose productivity. Now granted, these software services are really robust. They're not going to go, there's like a 99.9% uptime, I'm guessing, on most of these. But that 0.001% that it's down is pretty critical to businesses. And so they have to have some type of backup. And so a lot of times they're having these local SANs, hardware devices that will just load boatloads of data, can handle boatloads of data as a mirroring type of device. Emulation of computers, operating systems, environment, application, everything can be virtualized now. You have virtual workstations, virtual servers. You can also configure them to use different types of CPUs, different types of storage drives, different types of NIC cards, because they're all virtual. You want a certain NIC card, you can actually download drivers and apps that will give you that certain NIC card, which is great for educational purposes and learning time because you don't have to spend a certain amount of money on a certain NIC card. If it's virtualized, you can basically just virtualize that piece of hardware. VM appears to user no different than a physical computer. Some of you have used on virtual machines. In here we've used some. Maybe at home you've used some. At work you've used some. Runs the same software. Physical computer, virtual machines, and what's called hypervisor, which basically can manage multiple virtual operating system or multiple servers. So basically you have one box, right, in your server room that can literally host 20, 30 virtual environments easily and manage them from a tablet. You can manage them from a phone if you want to. Turn them off, turn them on, reboot them. Oh, one's pooped out, no big deal, delete it, dump a new one in. Literally, that's how quick it is. It's that simple. Yeah.
Didn't you show us back in the iOS class that if you didn't have a Mac, you can log on to a virtual Mac and then you emailed the file to yourself and then it was in your mail, so then you could download it on your computer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do that quite a bit actually, even with TeamViewer. In fact, tonight there was only one night I bring my Mac to school anymore, and that's my iOS class because I don't need it any other time. Because if I do need it, I can remote into it. I technically could remote into the iOS class too. It's a little drag with it, not much, but you're right. You can, if you don't have something on your tablet or your laptop with you, the great thing about virtualization is you can log into something that does, right, from anywhere. So you don't need to lug around anything larger than a little tablet, or if you can get used to it, which I have, a phone. You know, on my phone I can access right now currently about 15 servers from my iPhone. Now, it takes a little bit getting used to the screen, but I can go in and restart services. I can go in and install updates. You know, definitely apply to emails quicker. So a lot of things you can do. Monitoring tools and everything I can find just fine. Now, granted, this is not a workhorse. I'm not going to sit there and code something with this, but I can go in and do troubleshooting for sure, because I have on the shortcut of all my servers different shortcuts to different tools, different reports that I can start. And so virtualization is definitely, it's not the future, it's now. It's every IT department that you walk into today will either be installing or going to be installing virtualized servers within the next year or two, for sure. They're already put in their budget, for sure, to do that. Here's an example of virtualization. This is a crude example, but it's pretty simplistic view. You've got your box, right, which everybody's used to, your case mod for your computer. Inside of that is your physical NIC card bound to your motherboard, and then it shows two little bitty computers inside of that computer. And these would actually be virtual machines, representing virtual machines. And one could be, say, a Windows server, one could be a Linux server. And then hypervisor is a wrapper around it. It's a software wrapper that basically manages all of your virtual machines. Okay? And what's great about it is you can come over here and we'll say this is a image of a machine I have or a server I have. It's an image. I can take this image and I can duplicate it, and then I can back it up. And if this image fails or something happens to it, it gets a virus, I can delete it from my hypervisor and then just replace it with a copy and pasted backup image within minutes. So no longer do you have to reformat your hard drives, reinstall everything. You can basically just do what I just did here. By dragging and dropping images into hypervisor, you can then have a new server up and running in minutes, basically, with the same configurations as the last one. So that's the benefit as well. It does save time, it saves money. You don't have to have as much hardware, as many people doing it. One person or two people can manage this easily. Advantages of virtualization, it's very efficient of resources. We mentioned that. Cost and energy, we mentioned that. Fault and threat isolation. What this means is basically what I mentioned earlier. When you have least hardware, you have least chances for things to break, and also least chances for things to get stolen. Since it's virtual, it's in a box. You know, you can have multiple virtual servers in a box versus, say you have 10 virtual servers in one box versus 10 physical servers on a table here. I have to secure every server, every one of them, all 10 of them, with cables so people won't steal them. There's a cost. And then secondly, if it's all in a box, locked up, or even out in the open, one box locked up versus 10 boxes locked up, again, threat isolation is much easier to control. Somebody trying to break into it or trying to steal it. Simple backups, it's one device. You back up everything in that device like you would do a normal server. Recovery is easily. I've talked about replication already, of copying and pasting, backing up, simple dragging and dropping, and then you can restore it. Disadvantage, compromised performance. It is a little sluggish. I mentioned that already with the virtualized servers I use all the time. It is definitely, you're not going to play games on it. You're not going to watch videos on it, but guess what? You should be doing that anyway on a server, right? Not meant to do that. In fact, most servers don't even have the web browser ever launched once. Don't go on there. Don't go on the internet. Don't need to. Anything can compromise that server, you're not going to install, you're not going to browse out to, you're not going to do anything. So you might have been to some servers and you start up Internet Explorer, it's like, it looked like the first time it started up. Probably was the first time it started up. You just don't need internet. You don't use the internet. So anything that you don't install software that you don't need. You don't play games on it. Does that make sense? So basically it's just used for what it's designed for, which is managing users, managing files. Also increased complexity. It is a little complex to put one together and to figure it out, but once you figure it out and it's working and functional, then you're good to go. But it is a little bit more complex because you are managing multiple virtual systems within one system, basically. An example would be this. Complexity would be this. Say a server has 36 gigs of RAM. We'll say that. And you've got 4 virtual servers in that 36 gigs of RAM. You've got to share those 36 gigs amongst the 4 virtual servers. Well, within virtual servers, you can do what's called load balancing with memory, to where you can basically give priority to certain servers. So if one server needs memory, more priority, like an email server, it can steal memory from another virtual server that's not using it and borrow it. You can't do that on a real server. You can't do it on a physical server. You can do it on a virtual server. So that's a little bit of configuration there, figuring that out. Increased licensing costs. I already mentioned this. The biggest cost of virtualization is the software and the licensing. That's what you're going to spend the money on. Technology's gotten much better over the years, much cheaper, but it's still the most costly part. And then single point of failure, that's another disadvantage. You have 20 virtual servers in one box, guess what? If that server goes down, you've lost 20 servers. And so a lot of times what we will do, and I've done in the past, you can actually mirror a virtual server, mirror a box that has a virtual servers. That way, if this one dies, failsafe goes to the one that you've just recently backed up. And so again, instead of having one server with 20 virtuals, you got another server, 2 servers with 20, but the one that's in the corner there is basically used as just a backup for emergency sake. Virtual network can be created. It consists solely of virtual machines on a physical server. And the great thing about virtual network, you can basically design it however you want to because it's a virtual network. You can make it, however you want it to be. It can be a small network, it can be a large network, it can be isolated network, standalone. Most networks combine physical and virtual elements anyway. Programs for virtualization assign software and hardware characteristics. These are generally easy to set up. VirtualBox, VMware, Microsoft Virtual PC, these are all really easy to use as far as setting up just an operating system. It's a no-brainer to do it. The images, most I've already mentioned in here, are available to download, especially Linux. You can download all the Linux OSs you want, totally no cost, doesn't ever cost you anything. But then also you can find Microsoft ones, for enterprise level valuation copies at no cost as well. And then network connection does require a virtual NIC card. You can isolate that virtual NIC card to where it does not even talk upon your physical network at all. Totally blocked from your physical network if you wanted to, for isolation, penetration testing, things like that. So here's an example of a screen in virtual memory for VMware. You'll notice here on this screen, if I can go there, it's got allocated 1 gig of memory, one processor, but most of these can actually allocate more than one processor and more memory as well. If you wanted to add different things like different network cards, different network adapter, you could do that, or more than one network adapter, you could do that. Multiple USB controls, sound card. Those are generally within a virtual environment, not used much. USB or sound card, either one. Floppy is probably not used at all. Printer is probably not used at all in most virtuals. But then also you notice on the right here, all the memory available for this unit. But it does generally give you a recommended value. A recommended value in this case is around 1 gig of memory is what it recommends. Because it looks at your system and it looks at the processor and it determines, hey, there's a good range for you to install this virtual operating system. You can also, what's cool about it is you can limit the bandwidth or make it unlimited, like in this case. You could say it's going to only have this much bandwidth and this much output and this much input for bandwidth. And that's helpful as well if you're wanting this to be used as a test environment and you don't want, let's say we're using it as a file server or a FTP server, and we only want so much bandwidth to be pulled from that. Bridges and switches on a virtual environment can also be created virtually. All you need to know is about virtual bridges and switches is they reside in the random access memory within the computer and within the virtual PC. You can also create a virtual switch and a virtual bridge that networks the real NIC card to the virtual NIC card. So we have an example of 2 NIC cards on a computer or a server, and a virtual server on a single host connected with a virtual switch. And so you'll notice here, you've got VM 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you also have that virtual switch right in the middle that's connected to a physical NIC going out to the network, and then you have a physical NIC 2, and it could be used maybe just for the manager, for hypervisor or something like that, and that's probably about it. But you'll notice the 4 NICs is showing them as 4 real NICs, but they're virtual. They're actual virtual, including the switch. Yes?
Where are you getting these screenshots from?
Where am I getting these screenshots from? This is actually from my PowerPoint.
You created it on your own, or you went
No,
outside?
from the book resources. Yeah.
Because in the VMware class, it looks nothing like that. It's like cylinders and circles and squares. And
Yeah, they probably just use a different resource.
their resources suck.
Oh, okay.
They're terrible. Like,
I've heard that,
understand-
yeah. Yeah, Stephanie's told me it's not too hot.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
bad at all. Like, I can understand what I'm looking at
Uh-huh.
when I look at this, but when I'm in class, I have no idea what the little circles are.
Yeah. Well, I can post this on our conference if you'd like. It'd help. This is just a PowerPoint. I can post it up here for you. I'll definitely do that. But anyway, the virtual servers And virtual NICs and virtual switches are, again, just virtual in nature, and you can add them, delete them, modify them, whatever you want to do to them. Another example here is a real router, 2 real NIC cards connected to servers, real servers. And inside the servers, both 1 and 2, we have physical NIC A, physical NIC B. Look on the physical NIC A. It has 3 virtual, or switch A with 3 virtual NICs, Ethernet ports. 2 of the Ethernet ports are dedicated to VM1 and VM2. The 3rd Ethernet port's dedicated to the actual physical router, going right to the physical router. Over on the right side, the same thing it's doing there, going to physical router. And so virtual switches can exchange traffic through the routers just like a real switch can. And then you can add as many as you need to. If it pooches out and you reconfigure it wrong, you can delete it and re-add another one. Connection types on a network within a virtual environment. You must identify the NIC type, what it's going to be, okay? Drivers and all on a virtual environment. The most frequently type of connection type on a virtual NIC is bridged, NAT, and host only. Bridged will generally give you the same network connections you have on your real host, you're hosting on that computer. NAT will give you a NAT translation, meaning it's going to convert the IP address to something that's fake to the outside world, but it'll work internally. Host only is generally going to be isolated for that virtual environment, and it's not going to affect your real network at all. Host only. But you can still have internet connection with that, and that's about it. You get your internet connection from your real server, real network connection. On a bridge, I already mentioned that, access physical network using a host NIC, obtains IP address, default gateway from the actual DHCP server on the physical LAN. Example here of a bridged node, which by default, most of your virtual environments are going to default set up your network as a bridge by default, unless you tell it otherwise. Okay, you have to physically tell it no host only, you have to physically tell it whatever it is you want to set it up as. But usually it's going to be a bridge mode first. And notice here you can create your IP range however you want to, from physical network to your actual NIC within your VM. Notice the IP addresses within the VM are in the same subnet as the physical network. We could say for home users, this would be your wireless router, this 192.168.1.131. And then the 132.133 is going to be the VM. All right. The DHCP server gives you the IP addresses as normal. You could set your virtual NIC cards to auto-config like you do on a real NIC card, or you could hard code it, either one. Here's an example of what one looks like by default when you set up any type of virtual environment. It's going to usually be bridged by default. Then you can select NAT, or you can select host only, or select a certain LAN segment that you want to glom onto that's already been created. And just so you know, and I've already mentioned this, most of the time on a virtual LAN, you are not using floppy, you are not going to use USB, you're probably not going to use sound card, you're probably not going to use printer, and that's about it. Everything else you're definitely going to use. And the only reason you would disable those is since you're not going to use them, you want to turn them off. So it's going to use less processing power. Because when you boot up a virtual, it's just like booting up a real. It does take a little processing power to connect to a virtual floppy, a virtual USB, a virtual sound, a virtual printer. And you can use that processing power for whatever it is your virtual environment's about to do, whether it be a server, whether it be a PC, Linux, Windows. NAT, most of you guys have this at home out of the box on your router at home, your Wi-Fi router at home. And virtual NIC relies on the host to act as a NAT device. It obtains the IP address to the host, Virtualized software acts as a DHCP server. And then the default network connection type in VMware, VirtualBox or KVM. And I've already told you, didn't say this on the slide, but basically NAT is a security protocol set up for networking to where if hackers were to see that IP address outside of your environment or even inside your environment, it's going to be a fake IP address. It's not going to be a real IP address. NAT gives a translation to the real IP address to basically a spoofed one, if that makes sense. It basically spoofs a real IP address for the outside world to see. So if they were to try to ping it, if they were to try to do any attacks on an IP address, it wouldn't do anything. Absolutely nothing to your PC or to your server. Host only, and I would recommend keeping your Wi-Fi router at home at NAT. Keep it at NAT. I know some gamers like to take it off of NAT and put it onto like host only or the bridge. They say it makes it faster. It really doesn't, especially the new Wi-Fi routers. It does not help at all. So I just keep it at NAT, and I think most of your Wi-Fi routers will tell you if you try to change it, it'll say, hey, you do know if you change this, you can maybe lose some security ramifications, things of that nature. So, and it is true, it will be more secure for you to have NAT enabled. Host only, VMs on one host can exchange data with another host as VM. Done this this semester actually when we were doing the virtualization with software firewall. You set up two servers virtually, one a Windows, one a Linux, and then set up the host-only connection to where you would name one host, say, I don't know, RBC, and the other host RBC, and you connect the two between the host-only connection on RBC. And it doesn't affect anything outside of that network, and they can communicate between those. It never receives or transmits data from your physical NIC card in this environment for host only. So again, more secure connection, and more secure protocol communication. Already talked about NAT. I will just mention here, it does give the correct IP information. You'll notice the IP address down here is a 192.168.1.131. Here's the NAT, a 10-dot number. It does a translation outside of the IP address range of the real router to where if hackers were to come in, it's not going to do it. Simple NAT selection, checkbox, selected as NAT on a virtual environment. Host only, you will get internet connection from the real, but that's about it. Everything else is going to be isolated. Virtual appliances, let's talk about that for a second. Alternative to test servers and for new software. Virtual appliances include images of the operating system, software, hardware, specification, application configuration. Most commonly, virtual servers, popular functions for virtual servers are firewall, pfSense will be one, it's a real popular one. Totally free to use, by the way, having about 4 environments here in Rockford. Email solutions, network management, and remote access. If you're interested, by the way, in pfSense, the whitehats.us still has the steps on pfSense if you want to set one up at home using your home router. I kept them up there with a video and a PDF, so if you want to do that, definitely avail yourself to that. There's also open source email solutions as well that I would definitely recommend playing with. You're all familiar with Microsoft, but there's other ones out there as well that you can utilize at no cost. There's some paid ones and also free ones as well. Network management, this would be just managing your network, reports, things of that nature, managing hardware, managing access, and then popular functions as well, just having a remote virtual machine as a remote access device only. Just remote into a virtual device to do whatever work it is you want to do. Virtual network refers to the VMs connects with other virtual and physical network nodes. The virtual network management, nearly identical to the physical network management. So like Active Directory in a virtual environment would be Active Directory in a virtual environment. You have everything you would have in a normal server with Active Directory. Have control over users, over groups, over adding printers, adding file servers, things of that nature. You could also add VMs to physical VLAN. Modifying the virtual switches configurations to where basically you could have a virtual LAN that will also have a separate subnet from your real LAN to give you more dynamic and more growth, more security. A lot of IT departments will actually have a virtual, their email servers on a virtual environment with a separate subnet to be more secure from their day in and day out file server connections. Here's an example of doing that right here using virtual LANs. And each one of these have different ports that they're running on. So we've got port group 120, 121, 122, and 123. All we're doing with these different ports is isolating them to be in a different virtual LAN environment. So basically it's having a virtual network, a virtual computer or server running on virtual LAN segment. And you can separate them all virtually. And you can do it all with multiple servers connected to multiple VLANs. And all you're seeing here, on most of these NIC cards, you've got 2 to 3 connections coming in and out. Usually one going in, one going out, and then one going to another port for connectivity to talk to that other port, that other segment of the LAN. It might just be for monitoring. It might be for file transfer. Most likely it's going to be for monitoring though. Remote access. How many does remote access currently, or you have in the past to any device? You remoted in. Raise your hand. Okay. Remote access is very popular. If you've not used TeamViewer, I recommend that highly. LogMeIn, which I used for years, has now cost money after about 4 more months. So I recommend TeamViewer for students because it's still free to use. You can connect it at home at no cost and set up your computer to be accessed from anywhere in the world, from any type of device that has a web browser. It allows you to connect to the LAN or WAN from a different geographical location, allows you to access your resources from anywhere in the world, requires transmission path and appropriate software like TeamViewer. Popular remote access techniques. Dial-up networking used to be popular, but I wouldn't say it's not so much popular anymore. But when I first started here on campus, we would dial up onto the network, and I would get internet access from home and be able to do some stuff, right? Well, you can imagine when I went to download, say, a 5 meg file, I would eat supper, do my chores, come back, and it would be downloaded. Okay? That's what it worked like. So it wasn't the fastest, but you got the job done. The other one that came on the scene was Microsoft's remote access service. Still not a big one today, but the book has it in there. And then VPNs, that's definitely a big one. VPN definitely is a way that a lot of businesses remote in. It is quite expensive for VPN access. For a Citrix server, it costs about 18 grand for a medium to large size company to set up a Citrix server for hardware and software. Okay, it's about 6, 7, 8 grand for the server itself, and the rest of it is software license and installation and cost and maintenance. So pretty pricey, but you're talking about 150, 200 users to be able to remote in via VPN. And Cisco is definitely the #1 provider for VPN access and software provider for that. And it works with all of your iOS devices and also Windows. Has clients for Windows and iOS for Cisco, Citrix. And then dial-up networking, only thing I'll mention on this one I already mentioned, was it was very slow. And did the job, but very slow. They're definitely less popular today. And then it gives here the RRAS, which is available in all Microsoft products because it is a Microsoft app. It is a Microsoft service, which makes sense. But it definitely is not as popular as Citrix, not as popular as VLAN using Citrix. So here's an example of clients connecting to a remote server. You'll see some laptops over here on the left connected to the internet. And we could say maybe they'll be at home somewhere, they're on the road somewhere, going to a RAS server, connected to the router, going into the network to do work. Get data, print stuff, work on programs that you're working on, whatever. The difference is the type of connection for a remote server is going to depend upon that device I just circled. Okay, whether it be a Citrix server, whether it be a RAS server, whether it be a team viewer. Businesses tend to shy away from TeamViewer because it lets you into the environment with really no control on the business side to control that connection, if that makes sense. So they really frown upon that. So you can see why they want to spend the money to have one central location like Citrix Server to manage, to bring in clients, to connect. That way they control it. They know what's coming in, what's going out, who has what security, who doesn't have what security done. And it makes much better sense. But for home users, TeamViewer is definitely a good way to go. And by the way, for home users or even IT departments that have a lot of servers that you will have over the years that you're over, TeamViewer works great for that because you can have a connection, a direct connection as an IT person into a server on your devices that's totally outside of VPN that no one else can access. And so you can basically lock down your server, only have access to that one service, which would be like TeamViewer. Remote access protocols, quickly go over them. SLIP is one. Basically on this one, it's asynchronous, carrying your IP packets back and forth. It does require a significant amount of setup for this one. Point-point protocol, which is known as PPOE, used over the Ethernet. Standard for connecting home computers to ISP, like you guys at home. DSL or cable, going to use PPP protocol for Comcast, for AT&T, to connect you to your internet. Then remote virtual PC, we'll end on this one. Allows workstation to be remotely controlled and remotely accessed another workstation. Or we could say a mobile device controlling a non-mobile device. Okay? That's probably the most popular today, I would say. Your phone or your tablet controlling a server or generally a server in IT's in our world. You're on, I don't know, at a conference in Chicago and your servers go down or they're going down. You can remote in with your tablet and be able to do some, quick fixes to get that thing up and running. I've had to do it. I can remember I was at a conference in San Francisco about 4 or 5 years ago. Got a call coming out of the conference at lunchtime that the email servers were going down. So I think I had my laptop with me then, and I fired it up. I think then I was using Log Me In directly to that server, and within minutes it was fixed. They couldn't have got a hold of me. They were going to have to call like Network Solutions here in town to be able to come out and fix it. It would have cost a lot more money. But I was able to fix it in like a couple minutes and go back to my conference and go back to my lunch. And so real convenient, real easy to do once you have it all set up and you've set it up and you know how it works. Basically, and you've used this, those of you raise your hand have used it, those of you who haven't, is basically when you remote into any computer with remote access software like TeamViewer, it's like you're sitting in front of that computer. Everything you do on the mouse, you're going to see happen on the screen. Everything you click, it's going to click on the screen. So it's physically like you're sitting in front of that computer doing your work. It doesn't use a lot of hard disk space, does not use a lot of processing power, but it is pretty sluggish. Okay, some are more than others. Like definitely TeamViewer's sluggish, but you can get a pro version. It's supposed to be a little faster. I'm not going to pay for it, but it's good enough for me. But here's some protocols that we'll end with on remote access software, which is probably the most popular, becoming the most popular. And I've already talked about some of the remote access or software as a service, which would be email, database repository, whole operating systems, phone systems on software as a service. And again, Amazon and Salesforce.com is the top 2 software as a service provider. Google's another one. Google has a lot of software services. Like if you set up Google email, it's $5 per user per month for Google email in a corporate environment. If it's a non-for-profit, like a school, it's free, like you guys. We use Google here. Doesn't cost us anything. But for corporate, to set up Gmail, like in a corporate environment, you have your own @domain, whatever.com, but it's $5 per user, which is really pretty cheap, actually, not too bad. And that's like 20 gigs per user. Each user gets 20 gigs. And they also get, within that 20 gigs, all the apps within Google that they can use. like, all the software that Google has available, like, for your spreadsheets, documents, storage, Google Hangouts, the whole thing. Got it all. But basically you've got the OSI model here, and then on the colored sessions here tells the different protocols used in remote access. So we got RDP is a protocol used, TCP, IP, PPP, and Ethernet. Ethernet's physical, PPP's data link, IP's network, TCP's transport, and then RDP is the application. RDP stands for the remote program itself, whatever it is. And I wanted to get to, VPN. How many's used VPN before? VPN access. Used VPN? Okay, cool. Again, VPN, it's inexpensive software for the client, but it's expensive software for the server. And two types of VPN. You've got site-to-site and client-to-site. Most businesses are going to do client-to-site. From laptop, tablet, phone, to the site, using a client on the device, connecting to a tunnel, a VPN tunnel through that client, connecting to the server somewhere in your location. And most of the times they have like different session rules too. So you can buy Citrix so many licenses. They call concurrent licenses. So if I have 100 employees, but I know concurrently only 20 of them are going to be using VPN at a time, I'm only going to buy 20, 25 licenses concurrent. Meaning of those 100 employees, all 100 can use VPN, but only 20 at a time or 25 at a time. That makes sense? And so if I know I'm only going to have that many people on the road using it, it's worth getting it that way, concurrent licenses. You can also get site licenses, which are quite a bit more expensive, but that means unlimited basically for your environment. So if you have 150 employees could connect and respectively to VPN all at the same time. So Thursday we're going to be doing the lab on. Slip my mind here. Somebody help me here. Thank you, TrueCrypt. TrueCrypt, and I would recommend, if nothing else for Thursday, going to the website for TrueCrypt. There's actually some steps in there for the lab. One of the steps is a website you go to for TrueCrypt, and kind of interesting stuff. The guy that created the website or created the software also created the website. Over the years, it's gotten much better. The website has, but I'll just leave you with this. It's kind of funny. When he first came out with this site about 5-6 years ago, I started using it. And it's 10 Lab, I believe. Yeah, 10 Lab, there's a link. Anyway, he had a big paragraph on the front page of the site that said, basically it said like, watch your back, the man's looking over your shoulder. It's basically what it said. And then he began to tell about TrueCrypt, which is a genius software. This guy's a genius that developed it. It's a genius application, a genius concept. Because the app will actually not just allow you to create a virtual partition, but you can actually TrueCrypt the entire operating system with a password, with the software. Meaning you can't even get into BIOS until you type in a password because the entire operating system is encrypted with this software. And it's totally free. It doesn't cost anything. But over the years, what's cool about this guy is he must have gotten in a little trouble maybe with the wording he had on there, because it was definitely a big conspiracy theorist. He must have had a lawyer or something help him, but it's a lot dumbed down. The language is more dumbed down than what it used to be, 5-6 years ago. Because he has a few stuff in there as you dig deep in the site where you can still see some of the wording. I developed this, so if somebody was come to you and ask you for a password, you couldn't really give it to them because you created this key that you gave to so-and-so, and now you're not going to be able to access it. Stuff like that. but anyway. And he talked about the government trying to get in there. And this was way before, you know, the debacle we've had in the last, year and a half, 2 years with Snowden and this whole NSA thing. This was like 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago this guy started this. So maybe he knew more than people knew he knew back then. And so anyway, we'll talk about that, but it would be well worth your time to look at his website, kind of go over what it's about. We'll be using the tutorial on the website Thursday. He has a real nice tutorial. In fact, when you install the application, it automatically prompts and asks you, hey, do you want to start this beginning tutorial? We're going to go through that beginner tutorial, which has you create like a 5 or 10 meg partition, encrypt it, password protect it, and then we'll talk about ways you can use it as well, because once you create the partition, it can literally be where the key is on a USB drive, or even the partition's on a USB drive and the key. You plug it into any computer, start up TrueCrypt on the USB drive, and you have now a partition hidden on that computer while you're working for secure purposes. Anything you drag and drop from that folder that you create is encrypted on the fly. So as you drag files into this encrypted file, it encrypts it. You drag it out, it decrypts it. And so Microsoft, by the way, does have built-in encryption. I don't know if you knew this on these files, which most people don't know this. You can right-click on any file in Windows, and this happens way back in 98, Windows 98. You could right-click on any file, go to Properties, and there's a tab in there for security and encryption. When you encrypted it, even today, when you encrypt a file in Microsoft, it makes the file green, the letters green. The problem with that is it's tied specifically to you as a user on that machine, okay? And other people can see it, and other people can attempt to hack it, and they have been hacked, by the way. So it is in there, not really publicized much, because most students, when I mention it, have never even heard about it. I did create a really simple application. I'll try to remember to bring it Thursday. A Windows application that uses Microsoft's encryption to make it a little bit more secure. It goes through and you run this program, and it actually encrypts, hides, things like that. And if I'm not mistaken, the guy that developed this app, TrueCrypt, began with that concept, and then just over the years added more security, more protocols, more encryption types, added the hiding part to where when you hide the partition or you basically unmount it, it's totally gone out of your computer, and it goes down to one file, one seed file. So we'll talk about that. It's a cool lab, cool uses definitely for technology, and also can be used for evil as always. But we'll talk about that too. Also remember Saturday, 10 to 2, and Stephanie did say maybe pizza, maybe not. I said, yeah, you might want to get pizza. That's probably a good idea. If you want to get people, come get pizza. Because, it kind of teeters. Do I come? Well, if they're going to feed me, yeah, I'll go and come. Why not? Right? And so if you have any questions on that, also you saw those that raised their hand that's signed up for the Department of Labor grant. You guys won't mind answering any questions maybe, or why you want to sign up? That'd be great. That'd be awesome. It's one thing coming from a teacher. It's one thing coming from a student on why they signed up. Now, granted, they might have been pressured. I've done that before too. So they might say, well, I was just pressured into it. Or they might say, no, I wanted to do it. So whatever it was. So get with these people that raise their hand before you leave. And then if you have any questions, come up and see me. See everybody Thursday.